I'm Richard Scott. I'm an artist, although a lot of people would say I'm a businessman. I live in Cape Town, so I'm a tick the box off kind of guy. Ever since I've left school, I kind of had a list of long things that I wanted to do. Things like travel overseas, start your own business, have R1 million, play a musical instrument, learn a language, climb Mount Everest. I started with a company called Intercom, which was the internet version of Telcom back in the day. And I, having a left and a right brain, both being creative and technical, I worked with as a designer, an internet website designer. And I worked my way up the ranks there very quickly as well. One day I just decided, okay, it's time to let go and fly again. So I approached one of my colleagues at the internet company to start our own business, which we did. And he was a Muslim guy, his name is Ali, and we started a company, and I was the only white person in the company. We decided to make it a Muslim company. And I gave him 1% share of my business, and we sort of targeted a lot of the early BEE offers, tenders from the government at the time. And we'd get to young computer programmers out of university, train them up in SAP, Oracle, Microsoft.net, and plug them into various council-based offices and requirements. But the key was that everything that they ever did had to run through me and had to be creatively beautiful. So we had a creative team that would make everything look really nice. So that's kind of where that sort of passed before I started getting into art. So, sorry, what's the question? So yeah, so I was waffling on a bit there about how we used to, because that was one of my awesome stories of the business that we ran at the time. So yeah, it was getting a bit too much, and the money was flowing. And I just kind of one day woke up and said to my partner, you're gonna have to buy me out. And he said, great, I'll buy you out. And he wanted to take the business into a more technical space. And I was a bit of a handful. I'd sit in Vodacom meetings and I'd offer us millions of rands for stuff, and I'd say, well, I can save you 5 million rand instead of you doing that. And the one day in one of these Vodacom meetings, I just walked out. I said, I'm out of here. I walked out, and then my partner said, yeah, it's probably time, Richard, that we need to move on. And yeah, I remember selling my business for quite a lot of my equity for quite a lot of money. I heard a few years ago that he sold it for about 10 times that. But the uniqueness is that if you'd have taken that money that I've made, the calculation is exactly the same. But people say, why didn't you stay on longer? So, no, you've got to know when to get out. And I did the right thing. And so at the age of 33, I sold my equity to Ali. He bought me out over a period of about a year and a half. And yeah, I moved on to my next big challenge, which was art, or the business of art. I predominantly work on cities when it comes to where my art sells most in the world. It's Cape Town, Johannesburg, Leuven in Belgium, and then we've also got in Knokke in Belgium, we've got Hamburg in Germany, Frankfurt, and I even sell in New York, funny enough. The only place I really struggle to sell is in the UK. And I often work on your best, it's cliche, your best lessons are the ones where you fail. But there's a British artist called Julian Opie, and a lot of people refer, oh, that looks like Julian Opie. But if someone says that, I always say, his stuff is very digital, not defending myself, and I did my girls about 5 years before him, but he's more successful than me in that space because he had a financial backer who backed him. I've chosen not to go that route. I've chosen to grow organically and do everything myself, because if you get financial backers, you are no longer the boss. And I don't do very well with bosses, hence working for myself. I use an analogy with a baker. If you want to become a successful baker, you've got to have the right recipe, and that includes, you think of what's it, 2 ingredients, 3 ingredients? It's not, it's about 7 different ingredients that you need: flour, sugar, yeast, water, temperature, time, and the last one is some passion and something unique. So you need 7 ingredients to become a successful baker. And it's the same in art. You need to follow a certain path. And Picasso had ideas, and it's a recipe. You first got to flood the market for 5 or 6, 7, 8, 9, 10 years. Hopefully nothing happens to you, and you keep going, and you die after 30 years, and then you become famous and you make lots of money. I've got a slightly different analogy to that. So I've painted and sold over 3,400 paintings. I no longer do that. So someone will come here and want a gold tree. I'll try and source it for them on the secondary market. Otherwise, I can't help you. And then the other way of doing that is I've obviously got to supplement my income. So in 2011, I started to release prints into the market. So I've sold the same amount of prints in a quarter of the time. And prints are a little bit more affordable than the originals. And I've often heard someone say, wow, you've got a Richard Scott print. I've got an original kind of thing. So it's that flooding the market. Again, Picasso did it well. So flooded the market with originals over the past 20 years, 3,400 pieces. Now I'm going to flood the market with prints. And you think 3,000 paintings is a lot. It's not. It's nowhere near enough. I've still got another 10, 20 years of flooding the market. And there's always people who want, yes, within prints you limit your editions to 7. So someone's got 1 of 7 or 1 of 20 or 1 of 30. So there's also methodology within the demand and supply. I've only got 1 of 7. You've got 2 of 7. Or, well, I've got an original. So yeah, I might make it sound a bit sort of, what's the word I'm looking for? Sort of take the value out of it, but there is an underlying value. I have clients who bought paintings from me for 40,000 Rand in 2011, and they want to sell it now, and I'll say to them, on the secondary market it's worth about $18,000, I'll give you $15,000. And they say, but why can't you give me $18,000? And I'll say, well, if you'd have bought a Rolex for $40,000 in 2011, you probably only get double for it. I'm offering you 3 or 4 times the price. So that's how I've been able to, by not painting, start keeping the prices up. But I have, from the get-go, I used to have a 25% price increase twice a year, and that up until about 4 years ago. But it's very structured, very, very structured. It's not just, let me just sell this for, because it's left and right brain. The left side of my brain, which is the mechanical side, kicks in and kicks the right brain out and says, I'm taking control now, you've done the creative stuff. So yeah, let me take over. With regards to investors and people who have backed me, there's a few people. The first person was John Hargetide, Hout Bay Gallery. He believed in me in the very beginning, and he saw something. And there's a nice little story, because when I sold my equity in my business in 2000, I used to frequent the gallery quite often, and I became quite good friends with John. And when I did sell my equity, I went to see him, and I said, I'm quite keen to take up art. And he said, well, if you can identify this artist, this one, and one was Picasso, one was Van Gogh, and one was Andy Warhol. And I said, I can see Warhol, Van Gogh. And he said, how can you see that? And I said to him, you can just see it's in the painting. And he says, that's the secret, it's not in the signature. So John taught me that I have to have something that's very identifiable. People must walk into the room, and whether you paint Desmond Tutu, trees, girls, cars, cats, people must go, that's a Richard Scott. And that's where a lot of artists who want to become successful sort of fail. They have too many different subjects and types of mediums. So mine's very distinctive. So John taught me that. The second person that helped me in my career was Charles Besaidner from World Art. He was working at a gallery at the time, Rousseau Gallery. Josh Rousseau also helped me climb up the ladders and exposed me to his clientele. But Charles and I joined forces, and he started his own gallery, and we worked together very exclusively for about 2 or 3 years. He then went on and did his own thing, and I did mine when I reached the ceiling. And then there was people like Carl Smythe, crazy collectors who would just come along, and Jean Hermans, and buy 200, 300 paintings and just sit on these paintings and sell them to their friends. And then very early on in my career, I met Vincent van Zon. He's been one of my sort of guided, like a lighthouse for me, because Vincent is a very prominent Rotterdam businessman, and he helped me early in my career, and again in 2011, and to this day he's a business partner of mine on 2 or 3 of my projects, be they financial, be they soundboards, etc. So there are these guys, these partnerships that you have to identify, immerse yourself in them, and most of those people became my best friends. And Vincent had a look at my portfolio and said, you've been painting this Vespa painting for many years, why don't you go and speak to the CEO of Vespa South Africa? So Carl Smythe and various people introduced me to Andy, and that was that. And then the next project was an Absa Cape Epic, the bicycle race. We did a project with them for about 2 years. Then the next project was Desmond Tutu. Now we're looking at launching a Richard Scott sports range, which starts off with golf and Jacques Callis and Faf du Plessis with the cricket and all this kind of stuff. So yeah, And then I partnered up with DJ Black Coffee about 2 years ago. I don't know why I haven't got that project off the ground yet. I've been so busy. So that's what Vincent's taught me and introduced me to. So I kind of thought, well, I like Archbishop Tutu, and Vincent and I sat down and we conceptualized working with photographer Benny Gould, and we worked with we partnered with Benny, and he gave us access to his archive, and Vincent formalized the project. It's basically a series of paintings and an art box. So the paintings, we worked on 12 paintings, so it's because of 12 disciples, sort of slightly bring in the religious side of things with the arch. We invited the arch to come to the studio, and he got stuck into the paintings, and he had a whole lot of fun with his daughter and Paul, and it was really cool. And I was just like silent. I don't know what to say to this man. It's just so powerful. So the arch gave us his blessing, and Vincent partnered with the foundation, the Desmond Tutu and Mamalia Art Foundation, to put the business model and the business plan together. So this is the third project I started to work on, which is the Desmond Tutu art project. And it comprises two components. One is an art box, like this. And in the box, you'll get some original Richard Scott sketches, like this. And you'll get a book. And in this book is the life of Archbishop Desmond Tutu in 5 different chapters. So it's anti-apartheid, spirituality, reconciliation, global justice, and love. And these are 5 paintings that I created that are hanging in the Artscape in Cape Town. And those are the chapters. Anti-apartheid is this first chapter, and here's all the anti-apartheid photographs. It was a very humbling project to be able to meet the Archbishop and be the only artist that's interpreted him in such a big way. A lot of people have done other public figures, but not in such a detailed way. This project's been running for 8 years, so it's become a part of my life for the last 8 years. So this is an art box where you'll see the photographer from Benny Gould and the paintings by Richard Scott. That's one part of the project. The second part of the project is the series of paintings and prints, which are those 5 paintings, the red one, the green one, the blue one, the orange one, and the purple one. And those will be turned into prints. And you'll see here. So the arch was in the studio with his stamp. He stamped and signed each painting. There's the stamp that he touched and used. And it endorsed every single stamp, every single painting. So there's the photograph, there's the painting. And in the background you can see all this detail if you see the painting up close. It's the arch in church. It's a slightly different take on Richard Scott, standard Richard Scott style. The backgrounds are all white. The arch is wearing the colors that he was wearing, and the one object in the photograph is been color flattened. So here's the arch at home with his Bible, so that's all flattened. There's the Bible is the one flat color, etc. I'm going to skip that one because that one. Same here, there's the policeman in Hout Bay when they were negotiating with the local people. And there's the arch. If you look at the painting, you see the fine little detail. Exactly the same here with all the photographers. So that painting and that photograph will be donated to some of the archer's personal friends. And those are the 5 paintings that hang at the Artscape. That's the second phase of the project. Okay, so I got inspired to do a street art project because I was in Belgium and Iceland and Germany, and there was just so much graffiti, and it was just, I got so inspired. So I thought of this whole concept of approaching the guys on the street that stand there with these signs, you know, please, God bless, from the pieces that they picked up. And I bought these signs from the guys for $100, and I took their signs and I sprayed on them for myself to work as a piece of art. And I gave them another board
like this with my branding on. And we're getting this board plus the 50 bucks. Sorry, plus the 100 rand. And they, so I had a couple of more disciples out there selling that. And then the second part of that project was to spray some buildings. I got invited to do the Biscuit Mill, Woodstock Brewery, Woodstock Exchange, all these kind of buildings where I took the next phase of the girls, taking it away from the paintings that I do into a new series of works called the Street Art series. So what I do is I spray the girls on, and then I'll take a piece like this and I'll spray the girl in white with a stencil. That's simple. That then dries, and once that's dried, I'll take a Posca pen like this and I'll do the black line. Okay, so the proceeds of the boards that I produce with the street art that we sell these for $100. And people go, oh, I can get an original Richard Scott for $100, and that goes to Nisu, Desmond Tutu's granddaughter. She runs a program where she helps young girls who have needs, and they've been to the studio, etc., etc. So it's kind of like tying in underprivileged, the street, etc., etc. So that's. And then these works will go all the way to Rotterdam, to New York, and to Dusseldorf in Germany. We've got galleries there that sell my art. They like the more graffiti style, which is an extension of the graffiti wall. So this is the next level that I've been working on, where I basically splashed paint, the same paint, but I put it in cups and I splash it onto the paper. So these also get the black pen treatment. And each one is unique because the background is different in every way. You can never mimic it twice. Street art, it's interesting. Street art is not real art. It's I think that's more real art than any other art, because it's real. I met some guys in Wiesbaden. And they were real guys, and I went up to them. They were painting this massive mural on this wall in the street, and I'm going, hey guys, how's it going? And I speak a bit of German. I couldn't speak fluent with them in German, and I understood them fluently. And I said, cool man, how do you guys monetize this? And they go, no, we don't make any money. We make money from being waiters and doing stuff and fixing things and mechanics and stuff, but this is just for fun. And that's real art, I think. So I'm a bit naughty by making money out of it, but okay, when I first started to paint, they only had these thin canvases, and I wasn't very happy with them. This is an early original work that's just come back from an auction that I've had to touch up. So I wasn't quite happy with the quality of those thin canvases. So I went to speak to a carpenter, and he developed a Richard Scott canvas, which is a slightly thicker canvas using a wood that's not prone to pinhole borer beetle. It's just a better high-end quality product. And the same with paint. I went and approached a chemist, Barry from Dala, and he developed a white base for me, or what we call a clear base, which I use for my translucent colors. And he developed a white base for me, which is a thick white base for the opaque type colors. And what I do to get texture on my canvases, I take this paste and I put it onto the canvas like this. There's no thought process, nothing out of the ordinary. It just goes onto the painting like that. And then the paint that I use is a 25% pigment load. The reason why paint is so expensive is this costs 1,000 rand. This entire bucket of paint base costs 1,000 rand. So you can get away with putting a tiny bit of pigment in here and it'll be still turn red, but I don't. I put a 25% pigment load in, which gives me this very, very high quality red paint. And that's what makes it so expensive. So the paste goes onto the canvas. In my early years, when I was 2002 to 2005, I would carve into the paste like this if I was doing a cat. Now bear in mind I don't paint cats anymore, and I don't really paint any of the other specific works, but this is how I used to do it. And that in essence will be where the black line appears. So this will take about 3 or 4 days to dry, and then once it's dried I will then take paint, green paint for example in this case, and paint the green paint on the outside, yellow wherever I wanted to, and when that dried I would then come along and paint the black inside that line. So that was from about 2002 to 2005. The way I 2002 to 2005. The way I stamp and sign my paintings is with a wooden block. And these are all the different wooden blocks from over the years. This is 2016, 2009, this is 2006, 2007, and each block is slightly different. And I decided to develop a block where I didn't have to sign my own paintings. I could have assistants who could assign my paintings for me. So from 2002 to 2005 I used to sign my own paintings. And by the way, this is 2019, so I haven't done a painting in 2020, just to show you that I have no longer do original paintings. So that bit of water goes on like that, and that's how I sign my paintings. Cool thing about this is that you get each year it's slightly different. One day when I have the Richard Scott Art Museum, these will appear in the art museum as a cool funky feature. But the main reason is for counterfeit. People copy my art. They haven't copied my art to the extent where they're using the stamp. They've copied it in other ways, but one day they will be copying it like this, and then we need this as reference. And we'll use it as a reference with my code book. And you'll see here is every single painting from over the years. It's got a code on it. And we've painted 3,951 paintings. Take this one, 2006. So in the cases of trees, I basically, this will dry, the rose gold will dry, and once that's dry, I'll take a little black applicator like this, and this is how I create the branches on a tree. And a lot of people say, why are you showing people how you do it? And I'm saying, because people can copy you. I said, yeah, please, feel free to copy me. Go out there and spread the word. I don't mind if you copy me. It's just going to not be worth what it's worth because I didn't sign it. So then once that's dry, you basically take this applicator and do the black over the black lines. And it's supposed to be about the imperfections, all these little gaps in there. It's not supposed to be perfect. Once that dries, we'll then create these little black dots. I've never counted how many I do, but it's definitely more than 1,000, I know that, on each piece. That takes another day to dry, and then we pretty much take the applicator again and create the white dots onto the which gives you the look of a tree. Okay, so I wrote myself a plan in 2004, which was 16 years ago. And what I did was I have Richard Scott, I trademarked the name, I put that into a Pty Limited, and that sits into trust, they're called the Scott Trust, and that's what you call how you create a business and intellectual property. And the trust will one day be owned by the foundation, the Richard Scott Art Foundation. So the secret to becoming a successful artist is having fine art, which is paintings, paintings and sculptures, and that you have your own sales through your own clients and through galleries. In this case, I was selling in South Africa, United States, Europe, Italy, Belgium, Switzerland, England. So once you've gone through that phase of doing paintings, you then go into print and into merchandise. What did I do wrong? In 2011, I spent R1 million and I created merchandise. I went to Hong Kong and Shenzhen in China, and I created all this lovely merchandise with the tree range, clocks, carpets, spoons, knives and forks, pillows, you name it, we did it. Wallpaper, bedding, linen, cushions. And no one was interested in the world because I wasn't famous enough. I was just too ahead of my time. I didn't follow the recipe of paintings, prints and merchandise. So later that year in 2011, when I realized I made a mistake, I came back and I launched my prints. But the cool thing I did in 2011 is I created the style guides. And this is the style guide for the trees, which can be put into homeware. I created the style guides for the girls, which we can put into clothing. We can stick it on beer bottles. And we can stick it on flip-flops. And we can stick it on Vespers that you've already seen. So these are the style guides and the intellectual property that are created for the Richard Scott Art Foundation, which sits in a trust which is owned by my kids. So should I die one day, they can take this intellectual property and turn it into real money. And that's where the real kind of legacy sits.
Passion is very important because you have to have that sixth sense to be better than the next person to survive in this world, because we live in a dog-eat-dog world and it's fact. So you've got to have an extra element to be one step ahead of the next person. In most cases for people it's a sixth sense or a passion or something that you've learned as a kid. If you're not passionate about something, there's no point in doing it. There's no point in just getting up and doing stuff. You've got to be passionate. And passion comes from various things and come from something that your parents have instilled in you or you learned at school. I mean, I'll never forget it. It's when I was in matric, in art in school. I did art from standard 6 back in our day, grade 8 to grade 12. And from 8 to 11, I hated art. It was horrible. And then I got, my last year, Mr. Fuel walked in, and he walked straight to the back of the art class and started to paint. And I said, "Excuse me, Mr. Fuel, you're supposed to teach us art." Because he taught us geography, and he'd also give me, he'd whacked me many times. I was a naughty kid, so I could speak to Mr. Fuel like that. And he said, "I am teaching you art." And the penny dropped, and I got my board and my paper, and I stuck it at the back of the class, and I went and stood next to him, and I started to paint. And it was just his teaching skills. He had that passion, that something that got me going. And it's him, he's the reason why I am where I am today. Probably primarily, it's in my book I speak about him. So he had something. So you need to have that something, and you need to find what that something is, and you need to switch it on and just hold on tight. Even so that I found something the other day when I was 12 years old, a little boxer dog that I did when I was a kid called Sandy. And yeah, I actually hang them up near the front door, so you can see the boxer dog and the little hand pencil sketch and the gouache painting that I did with Mr. Fuel in the trick. And again in the garage, I was cleaning out the garage yesterday, and there was stuff from when I was a kid, drawing sunflowers and stuff. And it was kind of, wow, I really was actually interested in art. And there was a golden thread from a young age, from wherever it came from, I don't know. Creativity, want to be creative, left and right brain, I don't know. Okay, so I'm a family man, and that was one of my boxes, tick off, have a family. And yeah, I've got 2 children, Richard. He's just turned 18, and he's got his pilot's license before he's got his car license. And my daughter Angelina, she's 15. And I was always of the belief that if you have kids, you've got to be responsible for them. I was a very strict parent, so I've got very apparently well-behaved kids. And I always put them first. It would always be, I'd always make sure I'd go and fetch them from school, pick them up from school. The mom would pick them up, I'd fetch, always that kind of sort of family type, number one. Even to the extent of when I sold my equity in my business, we went to live in Cape Agulhas for a year, and just to bring up our son, Richie, in just total secluded environment. It only lasted 9 months because it was just too secluded. And yeah, we came back to the city, and I've always been family man. I've always tried to travel around the kids. I even did that extreme event called the Absa Cape Epic, which is a crazy mountain bike race, but it takes you a year to prepare, and you've got to cycle for sometimes 6 hours a day for a week. And I used to do that while they were at school. So whenever they came home, Dad would be sitting on the couch, hello. So the whole family part, it was very, very important for me to structure everything around the family. Richie's very well balanced. He's got his motorbike license last week. 2 weeks ago, he's got his pilot's license. I'm very proud of him. He beat me to getting jiu-jitsu blue belt. At the age of 16, he got his blue belt in jiu-jitsu. He beat me by about a month. So yeah, and also Angelina, we flipped the coin one day and said, should we learn French or German or Italian? She went, let's do some German, because she's traveling to Germany so often. So for the last 4 years we've been learning German. So very, very focused on children as an element, but at the same time having a balance with the finances and fitness and wealth. And so I have a philosophy: health, wealth, family. If you keep yourself healthy with food and exercise, you can have your mind can then work creatively to make money through wealth and make smart decisions in business. And in doing so, you can provide for your family. My short-term and long-term goals being business and art. Short-term as an artist, I'm formalizing a new partnership with Philip Powell and Salwell Eagle, and we're looking to launch the Richard Scott sports range. I need to get a couple of projects done. The black coffee one, and there's an Australian supermodel called Abby Dowes. She's an Instagram phenomenon. I'm doing a series with her. Long-term, I need to get the secondary market of my art into the right pricing category. And I'm developing a database to do that, a buyers and sellers database. I used to have goals, but COVID's forced my goals forward 5 years. I'm 51 now, and I said when I was 55, I'm going to become liquid. That means sell all your assets and kind of not have 5 houses, have 1, not have 4 cars, have 1, and obviously coupled with the kids moving on, because they would have flown out of the nest by the time I was 55. And I decided, due to the COVID pandemic, to bring that forward. To sit at home for 6 weeks in lockdown and having to rethink everything. My personal life took a huge role, took on a huge role. So I decided to bring my everything forward and try and make myself liquid now. So in the next 18 months I will do that. And I'll probably look at buying myself a little flat in Cape Town, maybe move to Portugal, and spend some time there, and just sell up this whole big, massive engine and move it into a print space. So if you really want to get a Richard Scott in the art space, you're just going to have to go to the database that I've been built. So it's very structured, but that's all been brought forward in my business life and personally as well. So that's kind of where I'm at right now. Long term for me, I want to travel. I've always wanted to travel. I've traveled a lot in my life, but I've always wanted to really travel, sort of go and stay in Tokyo for 6 months, go stay in Auckland, New Zealand for 6 months, go to Shenzhen, China, or Beijing or something, go and stay there and live and breathe the culture. Hong Kong, I've been to Hong Kong, I've been to China, I've been everywhere. I want to go back there. I've been to Iceland, I want to go live in Iceland for 6 months, through the hot and the cold seasons. You know? So all these wonderful places, I still want to go and explore those. But whether I do that or not, whether I tick off all those boxes, doesn't matter if I get halfway. My dad always used to say, aim high, and if you get halfway. So the secret is to aim very high, and if you get halfway, at least you got to high. So yeah, that's the short-term, short and long-term sort of things that's going on in my head.